Staying in contact. I'm London Mitchell. Each week, we take a few minutes to look at an issue facing our community and to introduce you to individuals that are working to address those issues. Sometimes we get into the weeds, but hopefully we can inspire you to roll up your sleeves and get involved. After the deadly flash flooding hit Texas, the internet came alive with claims the disaster was caused by our government experimenting with weather modifications or cloud seeding. No, that was not the cause. That was not the cause. The flooding occurred in an area often called Flash Flood Alley. That's because of its high risk for flooding and the remnant of Tropical Storm Barry that combined with the central Texas terrain led to these terrible circumstances. When you talk to the experts, they'll tell you that it is physically impossible for cloud seeding to have caused the flooding. But how many of us take the time to fact check, especially when the claim seems plausible, but with half of us now receiving our news from social media, we need to be more vigilant. That brings us to our topic for this installment and to discuss a big concern of mine, the continuing attacks on the news. I've been in the news business professionally since 1969, and I have to admit I find it very distressing when I hear someone say he no longer trusts the news. So what can we do? Using the claim of weather modification as an example, let's take the 4-step procedure suggested by the News Literacy Project. Number 1, check the source. The weather modification claim was not presented by weather experts. Number 2, was there evidence? And the answer, no. Number 3, there was no context. In other words, no presentation of weather maps that could be linked to cloud seeding. And number 4, taking our time to use our own ability to reason. Nowhere can we find any evidence that links cloud seeding to creating storms. Let's back up a moment. I mentioned the News Literacy Project. This is a national, nonpartisan education not-for-profit focused on teaching our children skills in news literacy before they graduate from high school, so they have the knowledge and the ability to participate in society as well-informed, critical thinkers. My guest in this installment of Staying in Contact is the editor of the Toledo Free Press, Lori King. I have joined with the Free Press to promote the News Literacy Project here in Northwest Ohio. And as I said earlier, with half of Americans receiving their news from social media, we need to make sure our high school graduates can distinguish between legitimate news and materials that are created to persuade, sell, mislead, or exploit. We not only need a free and independent press to maintain our liberty, but we need news we can trust. It was Thomas Jefferson who said, "Our liberty depends on the freedom of the press, and that cannot be limited without being lost." In other words, a free press is essential to a functioning republic, and we need to have the skills to determine if what we read and hear and see is the truth, and as I just mentioned, is not material created to persuade, sell, mislead, or exploit. It did not take much persuasion from Lori King, editor of the Toledo Free Press, to join her effort to promote news literacy.
It's really, really, really important that we fight back. And one way that I can fight back through the Toledo Free Press is by developing a program that is going to fight back one mind at a time. There are too many people out there who don't want to hear the news. They're sick of the news. They don't like what the news is saying. But what is the news? Are they, it depends on who you listen to and what you watch and what social media that you're a part of. When I first started doing TikTok, I thought, oh, TikTok, I really like TikTok because it's mostly people who think like me. I did not realize at the time that it was algorithms that make you want to watch it more and more and more and more because they find stuff that you believe in, that you've liked, that you've commented on, that you've posted. So you think everybody feels that way. I've since been educated about that fact. Now I know that it's a computer that does that.
So, the basic mission is to focus on an understanding of this new term, news literacy, the ability to determine the credibility of news and other information, and recognize the standards of fact-based journalism so we know who to trust and what information warrants us to act.
Our civic duty is to report the local news. We're hyperlocal. And that's why this news literacy program is vital, because we are going to be going into senior citizen homes, secondary higher education schools, businesses, and teaching them about the history of journalism, the present, and how that could lead to the future.
And certainly that would start by recognizing the importance of our local news sources.
So we have a big job to do. We have to train a lot of people about what journalism is, the difference between fake news and propaganda and partisan news. It really scares me that two people are tuning out to their local news. And we're free. The Toledo Free Press is free. And how do I get people to go to it, even though it's only like one story every day or two? But they're important stories. And you're not going to like everyone. You're not going to agree with everyone. You might not even care about half of them, because some people only like sports. We do sports, but not all the time. Our 4 pillars are government, business, health, and education.
My guest is Lori King, editor of the online Toledo Free Press. She's been in the journalism profession since the age of 18 and believes we not only need to recognize good, sound journalism, but make sure, as members of the media, we deliver. Next month, the Toledo Free Press will celebrate its first anniversary as an online newspaper.
Figuring out what our identity is. That was hard. Figuring out what our readers wanted. We're all different. If we print something on abortion rights, people, pro-lifers, they cancel us. And then if we did a story on pro-life, and then we probably got a lot of cancelers from the left. So if they don't like a particular story, they're gone. Rather than just like soaking every story in and learning from it and not realizing that there's a different world out there than what's in your little bubble.
Mm-hmm.
That's the challenge. And that's why I want to go out to the community. We need to go to them. We can't expect them to come to us. We have to go to them and teach them what journalism is, how to identify fake news, what is a conspiracy theory, how do you recognize that? We have a lot of work to do, London.
To me, ethics and morals were the foundation of journalism, and I go back to Thomas Jefferson and also Ben Franklin, John Adams, and James Madison, who continually emphasized in their writings that the free press is a bulwark of liberty. And that brings me to another concern I have, and that's how big money appears to be compromising our free press. I point to the recent multi-million-dollar settlements between Paramount, owners of CBS, and the Disney people, owners of ABC, with the White House.
I just want people to understand what journalism is and start to know that there are trustable sources out there, because hope is lost if you don't think you can trust any news at all, except for what you hear on your partisan news station, whichever that may be.
Mm-hmm.
And we will teach you about the difference in the different partisan news stations and how that came about through the FCC.
You mentioned the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. I believe much of the inability and unwillingness of us to be able to have meaningful political discussions with one another is because of the loss of the fairness doctrine, which required radio and television stations to present both sides of controversial issues. And if someone would like to contact you, Lori King, to discuss the news literacy program, they can email you at loriking@ToledoFreePress.com.
LORIKING@ToledoFreePress.com if you want to be a volunteer speaker, or if you would like us to come to your classroom or center or business. I'm just really excited to finally get this program started, and it's just going to grow as we proceed.
Lori King is the editor of the Toledo Free Press. You can find it at ToledoFreePress.com. And remember, it's free. I'd like to hear your comments about today's installment. Contact me through my website, londonmitchell.news. And please accept this invitation to join us again next week as we continue staying in contact.
Previous installments of Staying in Contact with London Mitchell are available on the Stream 419 app, Spotify, and londonmitchell.news.